All right. We are live now. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the AMN show. We are here with for mental health conversations, our monthly mental health conversation. Today, I have with me Dr. Gbonju Abiri, and I'm going to give her a good introduction. But before we do that, let's just wait for for more people to join us. And as we wait, Dr. Gbonju, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for having me
Thank you
today.
to be here. And I'm going to give you a proper introduction in a minute. Give us one quick second. We're waiting. We're broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, and some other places. So we're just giving people time to join us so we can have this conversation. And I'm going to also read your bio. So let me just pull that up. All right. And so this is what's happening. It's just like I'm going to tell the audience what's happening. Dr. Gbonju cannot see us. She cannot see me. I can see her. And so she is literally going at this blindly. She can only hear my voice. And so that's technology. We've tried everything. But she's a trooper. She's just going to, she said, let's do it. So we're doing it. So Dr. Gbonju, you look beautiful. We can see you.
Thank
And
you. Thank
and
you.
thank you for joining me today. I'm going to give you a proper introduction. So Dr. Gbonjubola Abiri is a consultant psychiatrist, a managerial psychologist, professional speaker, and the medical director of Tranquil and Quest Behavioral Health in Lagos. In Lagos, Nigeria. She is a co-author of the book Mental Health in the Workplace. She's a fellow of the West African College of Physicians, a member of Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, the Employee Assistant Professional Association, and the American Psychiatric Association, APA. She has received trainings from the King's College London, the University of Washington, and the prestigious Harvard University in Boston, United States. She's passionate about research in children and adolescent forensics, women's mental health, and occupational mental health. Gbonju is a mental health advocate, and that's one of my favorite things that she does. She's a mental health advocate who is driven by the holistic view to health, and as such is a regular voice on various print and electronic media where she utilizes illustration and indigenous language to reach her audience. We'll talk about that. She also uses her knowledge in psychiatry and psychology to influence and maximize effectiveness, effectiveness and productivity in the workplace via the Employee Assistant Program. She serves as the Director of Women's Mental Health at the ASIDO Foundation and is a member of the Global Advisory Council of Joy Incorporated. She works with the THR Media as a consultant psychiatrist and a sexual and gender-based violence advocate. She currently volunteers with the Lagos State COVID psychosocial response team as a means of contributing her own quota to the fight against the pandemic. This is so much. We're so glad to have you. Welcome to the show, Dr. Gbonju.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good evening,
Thank
everyone.
you. That is a lot of things that you're involved with. The most especially, I love the mental health advocacy. It's not too often that you find psychiatrists who are advocates of mental health. Because they're too busy with the with the psychiatry of mental health. And so I really love to see that. So you're based in Lagos. Tell us how you're doing. Tell us about your journey to where you are now before we start asking questions, talking about some other mental health issues. So tell us your journey. Let's get to know you.
Well, so I've been well introduced. I feel like you've said everything about me. My name is Gbonjubola, and I'm a psychiatrist and a mental health advocate. I live in Lagos, live and work in Lagos, Nigeria. I have this conversation every day about how it is that I haven't left Nigeria in spite of how tough and difficult the climb is, especially when we're having quite a lot of brain drain. People leaving the country to greener pastures. But I often say that, well, a lot of the work is here. We need the expertise here. We have that expertise trickling out day in, day out. And of course, what that means for people who stay behind or wait behind is that a bulk of the work has to be done by us. We are many times overworked, many times underappreciated, but
Hmm.
sometimes you have some people who come out and say, "Oh, doctor, thank you for the work that you're doing." And so that takes away quite a number of the bad comments that you may have had. It's tough, it's challenging. We get to work, against all odds. But I think that, when the passion and the energy and the drive and the motivation and everything that, puts it together, keeps it together. And I think at the end of the day, one of the major things that drives is the fact that you have patients who do well. I see patients, get back to functionality, increase productivity, increase quality of life. And for me, I would like to say that, it's one of the many things that drives the work that I do. And so that's the
Hmm.
work that we do here in Nigeria.
In Nigeria. I know, there's people are leaving, people, psychiatrists leave, psychologists leave just
Yes.
because of so many reasons. And
Yes.
it's not just this particular field, that just brain drain period. And it's also because of sometimes the very tough environments that you have to work in. And I mean, getting to work sometimes can be traumatic, where I coined this phrase, traffic induced trauma, a few years ago when I was in Lagos. I just thought, this is so traumatic when
Yeah.
you are sitting in traffic for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. How can you even function properly? And so there's a lot of reasons, but you're there. And so that is one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show to just say, thank you for the work that you're doing. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you for staying, because
Thank
somebody
you.
has to stay, right? Somebody has to stay. Thank you for
Yes.
staying. And with some people like us, we're trying to come and just do a little bit, because we all have to be in this together.
Yeah.
And that. So when you talk about mental health, in Nigeria, uh, in the past 5 years, let's say in the past 5 years, what are some changes that have happened in your opinion, or that you've seen, that have actually happened within that space of that mental health space in the country?
Well, thank you very much for that question. And, it's interesting that you ask. I'll go back a little and tell you about my decision to do psychiatry. My decision to do psychiatry was one that I stumbled upon or made up my mind about when I was in 500 level. And after, being on the wards and seeing that, well, wow, people like this exist, people who have disorders of the mind, I decided that I wanted to do an elective training then. So I went to the University of Ibadan. That was many years ago, probably like 2003, 2004. I did the training there, came back to school, and I was sold out to psychiatry. I said, oh, when I'm done, I'm going to do psychiatry. I finished, started my, house job, did my NYSC, and specifically went to the psychiatric hospital. I remember speaking to my friend whose dad was a CMD then, and I said, I want to do my NYSC. In fact, this is where I see my future. And so, of course, that's how my work started in 2011 when I started my residency training program. There's been a lot of change. I, had my residency training program at the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, which is at Yaba, popularly referred to as Yaba Left, even though we're trying to, have people change, have people change that name that they've given it. And so, um, over the years, what I have seen and noticed is that there's there's increased awareness about mental health disorders. There's increased access. People want to access the care. People walk in by themselves or are brought in against their will. But it's interesting to note that, young people in their prime who are able to decipher and take a decision about their mental health are actually walking in. I remember, many years ago when a young lady walked in. Young lady, very well spoken, legal practitioner, And she actually came by herself to the psychiatric hospital. It was extremely, interesting and insightful. Even though, we had a bit of an issue with her, she almost, ended her own life at the time. But it just went on to show that people are beginning to access the care. People are not, that people want to break down the stigma by themselves. People are braving the odds of stigma, of ignorance, of discrimination, and looking beyond the what will people say to how is it that I can get help. And so people are seeking help by themselves and coming forward to the hospital to get help, regardless of where it is that the hospital is. The other thing that I have seen is that aside from wanting to access care, people are now open to, methods of getting care. And so people will tell you, oh, I'm open to taking medication. Some other people will tell you that, oh, I'm open to psychotherapy. Whatever it is that can help me, I'm willing to do that. Another thing that I've noticed, and of course that I must commend across board, is that we've started to see a sustained rise in user groups. And so user groups, people who have mental health disorders, who have been diagnosed and who are treated, are now at the forefront, which is why, of course, I totally understand when you talk about the fact that you rarely see psychiatrists who are advocating because they're busy trying to take care of the bulk of the work at the back end. And so you see a lot of people who have been diagnosed with depression, bipolar affective disorder, went through trauma with, sexual assault or rape. They are at the forefront driving these conversations. And the good thing is that because the public can identify that, wow, we know these people, we can identify with their stories. These people are people like you and I. People are beginning to open up. Awareness is increasing, education is increasing, and stigma and discrimination are reducing slowly but definitely surely. And so that's what I will tell you that I have seen as improved over the number of years that I've been in practice.
Wow, that is awesome. That is such good news, because there was a time that you would talk about mental health. You couldn't even say mental health in our space because they would think, oh, that's just for crazy people. There's still a lot of that out there now, but there was a time you couldn't really. Mental health was not in the vocabulary of Nigerians. It just was not. You could say behavioral health. That would be adaptable, but when you say mental health, it's like a no. So what you've said is really it's very impressive, and I'm glad that we're seeing an increase in awareness, especially with the like celebrities coming out and actually sharing their stories. The influencers, it's sharing their stories. So that leads me to this. We're going to talk about it because it's happening right now. It's hot. We have to talk about it. So the horrific incident that happened at Darwin, this past was it last week? That happened. It has actually started a huge conversation about bullying at school, school's responsibility to students. And I just heard that today, was it today or yesterday, that actually another, and this was in a public school, that I think somebody drove a car. Yeah, into a group of students, and there are people wounded and dead, and all of these things happening. First of all, what are your thoughts? What should we do as a mental health community? Okay, because I want to get away from the hysteria, and the hysteria is acknowledged, and it is I'm not underestimating that at all. I'm just saying that let's get away from the heightened emotions and see what do we need to do. What happened at Darwin is not new. It happens at different schools that people don't hear about. We have been a part of crisis intervention for schools where they've lost somebody, lost students I've lost to the student died, and then this thing that happened. So they're all over the place. So what should be the mental health the mental health field? What should be our response? What should be the government's response? Okay, and what should be the school's response? the parents' responses. How do we help the children? Let's talk about that. I know I've asked a lot, but deep dive and let's have that conversation.
All right. Well, I mean, thank you for asking. I feel like that's the news that everyone is carrying in its quote and unquote honeymoon phase for now. That news was really triggering. I mean, I must be honest that even for me, as a mental health practitioner, it was quite triggering. Thinking that in this same area that, we all live, go around, this kind of thing happened. But like you said, it's not new. And so one of the things that I've seen for us as Nigerians is that sometimes we can be so reactive. A lot of these things go on every day until it hits the news, until it becomes quite sensational. People don't pay attention to it. And so when I heard about that story, again, it's looking at it from multiple lenses. What should mental health professionals do? There's trauma everywhere. Trauma is pretty much a fact of life for everyone. And so while people were clamoring and talking about bullying in schools, bullying goes on in our homes. Bullying goes on in our workplaces. How come it is that one now that was what we're so particular about? There's trauma everywhere. There's trauma in the fact that you just said it, traffic-induced trauma. There's trauma. There's the trauma of poverty. There's the trauma of people not being able to get adequate things that they need on a daily basis. There's trauma in homes, domestic violence, physical assault, adverse childhood experiences. There's trauma all around us. And so as mental health advocates, of course, we must continue to champion the cause of having trauma-informed care. Because many times, for instance, a few years ago, I did some work at the correctional facilities in Lagos State. And trauma-informed care is not a conversation that we're having just yet. It's still far from us because we've not even started to look at trauma as a big deal or give it the attention that it very much deserves. For government, of course, the attention of government has always been about, let's talk about our mental health bill. Let's give more attention to mental health. Let's prioritize mental health and not put it beneath what physical health is. For the school and for many other schools. I remember speaking to a parent a few weeks ago. I mean, this hadn't happened. The parent came with 4 of their children. And unknown to them, 2 of their children are already using substances of abuse. The other 2 of their children are already self-harming. They go to school. And, the conversation is, what are the schools doing? Are the schools even aware of the development of the children, what children go through, what you expect at certain developmental ages of children? The ignorance is still quite a lot. Again, like I've said, we're largely a reactive kind of people. And so when something happens, everybody makes noise, we're shouting. In a few days' time, the attention that people appear to be giving this will not, I pray it is sustained. And, on the heels of that one, you just hear about another trauma again. I mean, a few weeks ago, we had, the building collapse in Lagos. That in itself was disheartening, heartbreaking. And of course, had ripple effects on so many people. I remember having to counsel a group of people who had to go and do, psychological first aid on site. And while we're still trying to heal from the young man who lost his life in questionable circumstances, we hear that somewhere again in the same Lagos, a trailer rams into students, children who got up out of their homes with plans, dreams for the day. And so the truth is that trauma is all around us. I was talking to a group of students today and I said, we need to live life to the fullest every day. That's saying about how it is that you live each day like it's your last. It's not like you want it to be your last, but you also live knowing that uncertainties abound. Stress and distress may happen. How is it that I, as an individual, can cope with whatever life brings me? With all the anxieties, fears, and worries around us, it's difficult. I mean, throw in again the Omicron variant. And there's so much chaos, confusion, and uncertainty going on. Again, we're back in the year of 2020 where we had to deal with all of those issues. And so if there's anything more than ever before, everyone needs to be mentally aware. Everyone needs to take their mental health seriously. Focus on being mentally sound, because as much as possible, the focus is that regardless of the trauma or stress that life throws at us, we must be able to, first of all, take care of our own selves before we can even take care of anyone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's trauma is pervasive. It's out there. Trauma is pervasive. We can see it. But the good news is we know it's treatable, we know it's beatable, right? But we can't beat it or treat it if there's no trauma awareness.
Yes.
So we need to keep having this conversation. We've been training trauma specialists now since I actually wanted to start doing it just for in Nigeria, but it ended up being even a global thing that we've been doing this trauma informed training and since the COVID, since 2020, just to let people know that look, the trauma is all around us.
Yes.
And you have to understand that school that was shut down, I didn't agree with the shutdown. A lot of Nigerians wanted shut down. I believe that you have to, when you're thinking in terms of care, you have to think more holistically, and you have to think more broadly. So what should have happened and what best practice is not to punish the school, is to make the school better, is to make sure that the people are well. But thank God, we spoke to Lagos, we spoke to Dr. Ajomale, and he said that they are giving help to the parents. They're going to get help to the parents and the children or from the school. But what should have happened? Because here, we experience those violence here. What are we going to do? Shut down all the schools where we get that are violent? We have terrorist attacks. We have students who commit suicide. We have students who we have homicide. All of these things happen around us, but we can't shut down schools because of that, because we want to help, not penalize. So sometimes it could include changing the leadership, and give help to the leadership. You bring crisis intervention into the school. You train the teachers in trauma care. You train the students. You get them the help that they need, and you let them continue. The continuity of life is important during crisis moments.
Yes.
And so this kind of things, I think that there has to be some school mental health policies that governs everyone in Lagos State, that tells us, okay, this is how we handle crisis. This is what you need to have a healthy school, and every one of those schools should be made to take should take those trainings.
Yes.
People don't like to train. Training is training in our part of the world. I'm telling you, people don't want to get trained in things. So what do you think in terms of mandates? I don't know if we can mandate it, but strongly encouraging schools to take this healthy schools kind of training, this social skills building, this mental health trainings. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, of course, you definitely know that I would be pro anything that has to do with getting mental health to the grassroots. And I remember, visiting a few schools, asking parents, do you ask the teachers, do you ask the school management what exactly it is they are doing regarding mental health? Is it a mentally sensitive school, or is it a school that focuses just on academic excellence, which is pretty much what, the Nigerian schools focus on? Nigerian schools focus on academic excellence at the detriment of emotional maturity, psychological awareness, or mental stability of the young ones. And so I know that Lagos State, for one, has, for instance, they have sexual acts in schools. I also think that it should start being mandatory that they also have mental health policies, so that we know that we are putting our children in spaces and places that care not just for their cognitive abilities, but for the total round development of the children. I know that there's quite some work going on, with the Lagos State trying to do school mental health projects, coming into schools to find out what the issues are, to support students who are struggling, and to also, counsel and take care of students in general, so that they have, an awareness about mental health. It's abysmal to say, to say it at best, to say that most children don't even have an idea of what mental health is. But most children, of course, know that they must come first. They will be compared to other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all of that. And so the awareness has to start. And it has to start early, from an early age. We must give it to everyone. No one must be left behind. And of course, the school mental health programs that you have spoken about must be mandatory. It's not a matter of do we want it or we don't want it. It must be mandatory at all levels.
Absolutely. Because it's a life or death situation.
Yes,
We're witnessing it. It's
yes.
life or death situation. And the children who were bullying or who caused, I don't know, the investigation is still ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, so the alleged bullying.
Yes. Those particular students, they also need help.
Definitely.
They need help. That hurt, the cliche is hurt people. But when you have been traumatized in your own way, there's strange ways of acting out. That happens. So this is not a school issue. This is a society issue. You said that when we started talking. You said, look, bullying's happening at work. It happened in the families. It happens everywhere around you. It happens in the marketplace. The way we talk to each other, the way we yell at each other, the way we are aggressive to each other. All of this is not conducive. But I am seeing so many more young people with high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, suicidality, all of these things. This is on the increase I'm not talking about even in the Nigerian context. I'm not talking about any other, and these are parents who are doing well, who their children are doing well economically, who are in their career, but their children are suffering.
Yes.
What would you say to a parent who is listening to us now, who is one of those that's saying, let's let my kids are fine. What's nothing wrong going on with my kids, as long as they come first or second, sometimes even second self, they're gonna beat you. As long as they come first, as long as you do this, as long as you're that level of stress, what would you tell those kind of parents, please?
Okay, well, because in my practice, I come across adolescents, and then you see young adults whose parents had used certain parenting styles and had certain parental standards of their children. You see them at the end of the line, and you see young adults who are using substances, who are self-harming, who are suicidal, anxious, and emotionally unstable. And by the time you want to go back and find out what exactly happened, what didn't the parents do quite right, parents start to ask themselves a lot of questions. Oh, but we did this. We put him in the best school. We flew him abroad for every holiday. We bought everything it was that he wanted. We did everything. What didn't we do? And sometimes the problem is those things that you did. The children look at you and say, that wasn't what I wanted. All I wanted was for you to be there, to speak to me, to be with me, to spend time with me, to validate me, and to listen to me.
Absolutely.
To any parent listening tonight, I think that one of the things that parents need to know is that our children are the windows to our families. And once our children go out and people see them, interact with them, see certain behaviors in them, it's a reflection of the homes that they're coming from, a reflection of the upbringing that they've had, a reflection of the modeling and the learning that they've been exposed to, some of which and many of which they learn from us as parents. Cognitive abilities are fantastic. But let's remember that academic excellence does not equate success in real life. We need children who are all-rounders, children who are not just mentally sound, but emotionally responsive, emotionally regulated, able to solve problems and make decisions when situations happen. not children who will cower under pressure or be confused as to what it is that they need to do. You know, a few years ago, I had a client who I said to, he kept saying, no, my parents must pay for my master's. I was like, wait, what if they don't have money? He said, no, they can't tell me they don't have money. I said, what if they honestly don't have money? He said, no, they will pay. And then I'm like, well, imagine that you didn't have parents and they were late. He said, well, they must have left something for him. And I said, isn't there any other way that you could have gotten money to do a master's? You know what he said? He said, well, yeah. I'm like, so what's that way? He said, well, I could steal. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So even if that's an option, anything else? He said, no, there's nothing else. Again, so you see, no problem solving abilities, problems with decision making. And I was like, have you ever heard of scholarships? He said, oh, yes, scholarships. I said, have you ever heard of the fact that you can work, save money, and then pay for your own master's? Said, oh, that's true.
Yeah.
This generation is raising children who are largely entitled, fully dependent on parents for just about anything. We need to pay attention to the children. I know that it's difficult because, you know, parents are trying to make ends meet, make a good life for these children. But we must always ask ourselves, what do my children want? What will make them happy? Is it all the things that I am spending money on? Or can I also spend time with them, listening to them, talking to them? It's often said that to a child, love is spelled Time. They will never forget those little moments, those memories. We must take time out to be with them, spend time with them, monitor them, know who their friends are, know what it is that they're watching, know when they're struggling, and know how best it is that we can support them on their own life's journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So well said. So very well stated. You cannot replace love. You cannot replace the time you spent with your children with anything else. It's not going to work. It's not a substitute. You know, academic excellence, the best schools, the best material stuff doesn't substitute for the time that you spend with your children. In addition to the time that you spend with your children, you alluded to this, the developmental stages. One of the things about developmental stages is this: if you do for your kid, for your child, what they should do for their own sense of development, then you're stunting their growth. They will get stuck. So even as little kids, you know, making decision, should I wear green? Should I wear blue? You know, those little kind of things. Should I do this? Should I do that? Teaching them how to make choices, teaching your children and talking to them, like not yelling at them, but talking to your children. Just go in, especially teenagers, go into their room and just find out what they like. You know, find out what they like and try to speak their language. They will, of course, make fun of you, but they like that, but they like it. You know, sometimes I just go into when my children were in high school, you know, well, one of those parents, we were one of those parents that we didn't let them go. It wasn't like, you know, sometimes when they get to middle school or high school, it's like hands off. No, we were not hands off. It was hands. We'll go to their room. I'll go to their room and just sit down there and just hang out. I'm not asking them any questions about life issues or anything. We're just hanging out. When your children get comfortable with you, then they're able to share stuff with you, so that you're not going to find out. Because one of my questions is, when we hear about this bullying at school and these children who are being injured outside, how come we don't know at home? Do you understand? And this is not a blame blame the parents. We don't want to blame parents. We want to help parents. We're giving you strategies to help you actually help your children. So in your house, if there's a lot of yelling, let's tone it down. That's trauma. That's a trauma response.
Yeah.
You need to bring it down a little bit. Create a place in your house where people can thrive, where your children can thrive, where they want to be. Talk to me about emotional manipulation. I've had young adults that will tell me, I feel like my parents are emotionally manipulating me. Oh, have you heard that? And how should a child who feels that he or she's been emotionally manipulated, how should they respond to that? And what would you also tell the parents not to stop manipulating?
Well, so I get to hear about that a lot these days. I'm currently managing a young lady who says to me that, the reason why she's turned to substance as a form of escape was because her mother was always emotionally manipulating her. I think that, how we grew up is definitely different from how people are growing up in this day and age. And so, some parents have learned to do over time is how they can seek power over someone else, employing dishonest or exploitative strategies to gain it. And so many parents want their children to do things without, stating why, stating what it is that the other individual will gain. Some parents lie. Some parents use intense emotional connection to control the other person. Sometimes they play on their children's insecurities. They don't attend to the issues that their, children talk about. They move the goalposts. I mean, you promise them something today, and by tomorrow you're saying, "Oh no, I didn't say that. Maybe you heard me say something else." And then one very constant one that parents around here tend to use is that they use fear to control the other individual. And so a lot of children are beginning to revolt again, using externalizing behavior, getting angry, becoming passive aggressive, destroying things, turning to substances of abuse to cope, or just, joining friends that have questionable character, such that, the school is calling parents, "Oh, your child is doing this, your child is doing that." And unfortunately, a lot of parents do not understand that this is what it is that they are doing. They just say that, "Oh, well, I'm being the parent." And so, for instance, this parent that I was talking about was actually called me for something, wanted something from me, asked me a question. And in my response to her question, of course, I listened to her, allowed her to articulate her thoughts really well. And while I was trying to respond, she immediately said to me, "Oh, don't get too defensive." And I'm like, "No. So this thing that your child was saying is actually true. You do it. You ask me a question, and all I'm trying to do is give you a response. Why are you now, trying to play the emotional manipulation game and tell me that I'm getting defensive?" Parents must realize that it causes a lot of emotional disturbances in their children, such
Yes,
as,
it
of course,
does.
anxiety, depression, unhealthy coping patterns, including the use of substance. And the children, of course, find themselves constantly trying to please the manipulative parent. It's as if these
Absolutely.
children live their lives to please the manipulative parent because that's all that they have known all of their lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's trauma coping. It's trauma
Definitely.
bonding. It's trauma coping.
Trauma bonding, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And so one of the things. So yes, what happens? You're the only primary care that they've ever had. So they are going to justify even the horrible things that are happening, the traumatic things that are happening. They're going to find a way to make it okay, so that they can be safe, because they're powerless. They can't provide for themselves. They don't have, they don't have shelter for themselves. They have to stay there. So they will try to justify and try to find a way to make everything okay, just so they can be safe. But they are going to pay for that in the future. They're
Definitely.
going to have their relational schemas that are disrupted. They're going to go into complex trauma because they've been injured in childhood. And then
Yes.
we see them 30 years later or 20 years later, and they're talking about what happened when they were home, right? And
Yeah.
so if you're a parent listening to us and you know that you have your own issues, emotional baggage and things, most of us do, right? But you
Yes.
have to work on them, because trauma can be passed on to
Yeah.
somebody. If you don't treat yours, you're going to pass it on to your children. So do if you're thinking about the best, we're talking about the way forward. We need to, what is in the best interest of the family or the child is that everybody in the family is doing well, right? Is that everyone in the family is doing, we're starting with you. So moms and dads, you need to get well. You need to make sure that you're okay. And then you need to make sure that your children are okay. It is okay to ask for help. I'm glad that Dr. Abiri was telling us that people actually are coming, are self-referring, but our parents are also bringing their children to get help. More of that needs to happen. One of the things I want to touch on before we go is the intersection of faith and mental health. The intersection of faith and mental health. Somebody said yesterday in one of the groups that I belong to that it is easier if a pastor calls for 7 days fasting or 7 days of church or 7 days training or whatever, the entire community will go there. They will be there. But if you tell them, come get trained for a mental health thing, or come get trained for this and that, so that you can be equipped, people won't show up. How do we merge this? How do we remove this barrier between us? Because I believe that that faith and mental health are intertwined. You can't talk about scriptures and not talk about mental health. I mean, why wouldn't the God who created you care about your emotional and your psychological health and your social health and everything? God cares about all of those things. Tell me your thoughts about this and when it comes to our culture and what we can do to remove the barrier that's really pronounced.
All right. I mean, to respond, and you see me smiling, it's largely because I agree with you that people are more likely to tend to respond to a pastor saying, "Oh, do this," or a religious leader saying, "Do this or do that," as compared with when you say, "Oh, come get trained" or something. And it just shows you where their allegiances lie, where their what their priorities pretty much are. Most mental health conversations are not complete if we don't talk about the place of religion and or culture, because these are the things that are intertwined with our lives, that we have lived with so long, that people have believed in, and unfortunately that have held people bound for quite a while. Interestingly, of course, I must state at this point that the landscape is changing, and it's changing quite fast these days as compared with a number of years ago. The invitations that mental health practitioners have gotten from religious organizations are increasing by the day. And so people are beginning to realize and see the need. And they are also beginning to understand, the power that they hold in their hands. The pastors understand, the imams understand, the traditional worshippers also understand that my congregation is likely to yield to what I would say before they yield to something else that somebody will say. The good thing is that they're also seeing, evidence-based practice. And so, for instance, if they call you to come and take care of someone, and in a week the individual has a complete turnaround, the faith that they have in your own practice is also increased to a large extent. And so the best way that, spirituality or religion and mental health can pretty much meet in the middle is when we realize that we all have a role to play in each other's fields, and that one is not more superior than the other. However, we must be, humble enough to reach out to each other, teach each other, encourage each other, advocate, so that people understand that, well, while your spiritual lives matter, your mental health, of course, and your mental well-being or wellness is not complete until you have those 8 pillars of wellness and well-being, of which, of course, spiritual health is one of those. So the landscape is definitely changing. And of course, we would like that, there are more and more collaborations between faith leaders, faith healers, and mental health professionals as well.
Absolutely. And the landscape is indeed changing. And especially since COVID, people I tell my students, I teach master level students and who are clinicians. And one of the one of the things that we're having the conversation the other day in class, and we're talking about one of the side effects of COVID is the embrace. The culture collectively, we've embraced this whole notion of trauma, and there's a lot going on in trauma field right now, in trauma healings and trauma and evidence-based practices that has happened, that more than ever. And so it's really a fun time to be part of this space.
Yeah.
Is to be part of this space, right? And because of that, a lot more people are just becoming more responsive to this. So if you're listening to us and you're in the faith space, it is, there's nothing to be afraid of. Mental health is not some devilish thing that we're talking about. Honestly, it is part of, I'm a Christian, so I can speak as one. It is part of the covenants that we have with God. It's spirit, soul, and body. Your soul is just as important as your spirit and as your body. All of those things are inclusive in the salvation package. So it is, when we're talking about being trauma informed in your churches, we want you to know that there are people who would come to church and they would pray and fast and still struggle with anxiety, still struggle with some kind of cognitive disturbances, still struggle with some kind of mental health issue. And it is how, when they're keys to the kingdom. And part of the keys of mental health is being able to unlock the treatments and the care that you need for your congregation so that they can be well and they can be functional. So if you're listening to us, we want you to know that it is okay to invite some people in to share with you, that you trust, to share with your congregation. And it never fails. When we go to places, when we're doing this intersection of faith and mental health, when you present it to pastors, they are usually very receptive, because they're like, oh, okay, so that's what depression is. Oh, maybe I was depressed at that time in my life and I didn't know. That people just, knowledge is power. So be knowledgeable, know what you know what's going on, so that you can do no harm and reduce harm with your congregation. Now, when we talk about, and we have just a few minutes left. I'm using every minute I have with you today because I'm just glad that you're here with me. So when I know that you started this, is it television or radio thing? You started a network for mental health. I saw it on Instagram at some point. Tell us a little bit more about that, what you do, because you said it was the first. I think you said it was the first of its kind. Let's share a little bit about that for us, and let's see if we can, our audience can at least hook up with you.
All right. Well, so for the longest time, I'd usually talk about mental health, advocating for mental health, and I've done it with different media, largely, the print and the electronic media. And so what I decided to do on October 10th, which was, the World Mental Health Day this year, was to pretty much put together all the work that I had done in the past 1 year. And then I called it the Mental Health TV with Dr. G. So it's a platform that launched on YouTube. Mental Health TV with Dr. G is on YouTube. And what it is that it's a one-stop platform for advocacy, education, and increasing awareness on all things mental health. Like I said, it's on YouTube, and it's pretty much a collection of a lot of the videos that, I've done over time on mental health issues, on the COVID, on coping, on art, on things specific for children, things specific for adults, for women, for men. It's, I'll say it's a rich resource, but much more than that is that it's also a resource that affords us the opportunity as mental health professionals to have a one-stop shop where everyone can put their, content out there so that people are able to view it at any point in time. Of course, beyond the Mental Health TV with Dr. G is also the fact that I had done a couple of videos, known as the Wait a Minute videos, Wait a Minute with Dr. G, which are, videos that provide concise, comprehensive, relevant, and factual mental health information in 60 seconds. Aside that, like I said, I also utilize, print media. Print, for instance, being illustrations, beautiful illustrations, which I call the On the Couch with Dr. G series, which, accesses the avenue of real life conversations between me as a therapist and my clients in a confidential, non-judgmental, and relatable manner. And so the conversation is always on. Whatever it is that can appeal to people, that can appeal to their senses, and most importantly, that can get the message out there. So, of course, the channel is live running on YouTube, Mental Health with Dr. G. And of course, a lot of hard work is still going on at the back end to ensure that, quality material is put out there, and so that people can reach whatever it is that they need on mental health issues at the touch of a button, wherever they are, anywhere in the world.
Excellent. So you hear it. Mental Health TV with Dr. G is on YouTube. So make sure you avail yourself to this resource. This is a powerful resource in mental health. And Dr. G, let me ask you, it's the end of the year. We're finishing up. People are rounding up, rounding down. People are trying to take stock of what happened this year. What are some tips that we can leave them with that just says, look, it's the end of the year. Whereas these are some mental health tips that you can utilize while before the January 1st. Any quick tips for us?
Well, so I know that, a lot of people are overwhelmed because when they're taking stock, they're doing comparisons. But I remember that Eminsway says that there's nothing noble in being superior to a fellow man. True nobility comes in being superior to your former self. In looking at this year, there's a joke that had been going around that how much have you saved this year? And somebody said, I have saved my life. My life.
That alone.
and it's a lot. It may not seem like it's a lot. It may not seem like you are where it is that you want to be. But trust me that tomorrow is a better opportunity to start more intelligently with whatever it is that you haven't done well with. Is it work? Is it your career? Is it relationships? You can always do better. You know how we say that whenever there's life, there's hope. It's true. It may seem like it's not true, but whenever you are in a good place mentally, which is why the conversation on mental health must always continue. We must realize that we may not be able to change reality. We must accept what it is that reality has confronted us with. Of course, that doesn't say that we shouldn't aim for better, try to do bigger, but as much as possible, reduce the pressure that you put on yourself as an individual just because you think that you haven't arrived just yet. Focus on the things that you can control. Make your mental health a priority. Sleep well, eat for your type. Eat to fuel your body, not to feed your emotions. Exercise. Take good care of yourself. Spend time with loved ones. Take yourself away, of course, from toxic environments and toxic relationships. And if you are the one who is toxic to yourself, please, by all means, identify the trauma. Go for therapy. There is nothing wrong in seeking a professional. And by all means, of course, ensure that at all times you remain in optimal mental health.
Excellent. That is that. On that note, we are going to end the program in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for sharing this space with us. You said something about, you said about how much have you saved this year, and I've saved myself. That is so pronounced. That is something that everybody can relate to. I have a let me read this out. I put this on my social media page. When the wind blows against you, stand strong and row. The main thing to do is stay afloat until you know the direction of the wind. Don't make life-changing decisions during a storm. Those decisions will be trauma responses. Float. Stay alive. Live for another day. That's what that is saying. I saved myself. It's saying that sometimes all you need to do is survive.
Yeah.
All you need to do is survive. And if you survive, then tomorrow can be better.
Yes.
You don't want to die. Don't die anywhere. Don't die emotionally. Don't die spiritually. Don't die in any way that you can prevent death. Stay alive, survive for tomorrow. You know, we can live again.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. G. It's been such a delight to have you here. We have so many responses. People saying thank you, and well done. Thank you for spending time with us. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, Dr. M. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right then. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for watching us today. We'll see you next month, 2022, on another AMN Mental Health Conversation. Bye-bye.